Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the Black Powder Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Matthews. Today, I have a very interesting figure on the podcast, and there's a specific reason why I wanted to have him on, and that's because a lot of people don't think it could happen to them. When I say it could happen to them, I'm talking about the government going sideways on you. And without further ado, I want to introduce today's guest, Mr. Aaron Horrocks. Go ahead and say hello to the people, my good man.
Hello.
So tell us about yourself and why you're coming on to tell your story today.
Well, I've been offered a couple interviews, but I'm a little weary of places like Washington Post and whatnot, telling a story and editing things up incorrectly. I've already been in a couple news articles where they didn't even contact me and publish information about me. And then when I tried to contact them, they deleted all my comments. Ooh. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So you were in the military. You're United States Marine for, you said, 8 years?
8 years. I joined pretty late. You have to join the Marines before you turn 28. So I went and talked with the recruiter around 26, 27. Signed up before I turned 28. Waited in the depth for a long time, and then shipped out, turned 29 in boot camp, and then did 8 years. Got out in 2017.
So what were they calling you in boot camp? I know a lot of Marines and
Grandpa, mostly.
Yeah, jokes are mandatory. So Grandpa and the Marines. Did you go overseas?
No.
Okay.
Stayed at the Coness the whole time. So when I got to my unit, they came back from Iraq. So they're just gearing down when I got there.
Uh-huh.
And while I'm there several times over, we're getting more training. We're getting better guns, getting better equipment. They're cranking us up to deploy, and then it gets scrubbed.
Oh, shit. Well,
time after time.
I guess you can make the best of that because, the peril associated with going overseas could be quite traumatic. But I think everybody wants to know, did you ever get your free meals from Applebee's? Because that's what, when you serve, I don't think America can truly thank you enough other than some Applebee's corporate food.
Like a couple of TikToks and other videos I made, I said I eat free in Veterans Day and I still don't go to Applebee's.
Okay, well, at least you have some class. And people, that's another reason why I wanted to have Aaron on, is because I think Applebee's may be the worst franchise restaurant in the United States. And I hope they contact me only to get some constructive criticism on why their menu sucks. Their drinks are good. I don't hate on them because of their bar. But, other than that, Applebee's is it's the bane of it. To me, Applebee's is like the Kevin Costner of restaurants. And Kevin Costner may be the worst actor in America currently.
Oh.
I just wanted to put that out there. He can contact me too, and we can discuss why I think he's the worst actor in America, minus the Hatfields and McCoys. He had a great role in that. And Dances with Wolves was okay, so I'll leave it there. So when I was introducing you, I was talking about how a lot of people don't think that it could happen to them. So can you tell people what happened to you?
So I was a collector, not an avid shooter. A lot of stuff I own is really old. I'm a nerd. I'm an engineer. I've really quiet keep to myself, and I just built up a huge collection of military vehicles and guns and stuff. And I used to play a lot of airsoft. Got into reenacting, and my ex ran off with my kid and sued me for everything she should get. So I ended up losing my house. So I moved in with my mom. So then I'm taking care of my mom while I'm going off with the Marines a lot. Everything seemed fine to me, but unknown to me, behind my back, she was calling the police on me, reporting domestic disputes while I wasn't there.
And the police follow through with these without the investigatory process enough to figure out that you weren't even present during these allegations?
For 2 years, some 22 phone calls.
Shit. So
They show up to a domestic dispute with I'm not there and she's there, and they take a report or they don't take a report, they take some notes and they leave and they don't follow up with me.
So when I know in California, when it's a DB case, you know, they're real particular on if the person owns firearms or not. And you said you're a collector, so I'm assuming you didn't have like actual World War II bazookas with live rounds or M1919s. Yeah, with nothing with you didn't have like actual ordnance on you yet.
Nothing DD.
Yeah, but they came for you.
Yeah.
And for me, like I was saying earlier, that Americans may not understand truly when things like that happen, and you know, and it goes through a litany enough of other things, and the government makes examples of people. They're trying to set precedents, and the fact that they're not being held accountable for doing things like what they did to you, that just makes it more. It makes it easier for them to do it to another person, and that's why we're all in the same line. Your experience going through this, how did it affect you as far as mentally being a guy that did things the right way, so to speak? You know, Boy Scout, Marine. You went and gave to this country, and in return, how did that make you feel the way they treated you?
There's a huge amount of disbelief to begin with, because, you know, I would just say I was more like a conservative Republican, and I respected the police, even if a lot of them are, you know, pretty dumbasses, you know, but they're generally there to help out. And here they are, they turned against me because of some phone calls, and they think that I'm the bad guy, and they're coming after me, and they raided the place and without a warrant and threw me out and confiscated my guns and treated me like shit and said I had to leave. And I don't have any paperwork, and I don't have body camera footage, and I can't prove it, and I'm going after these guys and calling internal affairs, and nothing's happening. I run up to the chief of police and I call the city council and I go to the mayor. I'm just getting the runaround like I'm a nobody, and just shut up and deal with it and go away.
See, that disturbs me to no end, because this is not what America is. America, especially at the local level, because that's truly the only power we as American citizens have over our government, is at the local level. Once you get to the county, state, and federal, you're nothing but a number to them. But in the local elections, that's where there's accountability. When you're talking about a local police force, that's where there should be accountability. And in this case for you, there was zero. And
there still is. And it's I've issued a request for the body camera footage, and it was denied. And I've gone through multiple lawyers, and I've had 7 subpoenas issued on the police, and they've ignored them.
Where do you think we can get accountability? How do we get accountability from our local government, based on your experience? Is it even possible?
I don't know. That's why I went to the sheriff, and I went to the DA's office, and I presented them with the information, and they're like, yeah, that's illegal, but you have to call the police. Like, but the police are the ones committing the crime. Why did I go to the police if they're the ones breaking the law? And he's like, oh, well, you have to go to internal affairs. It's like, well, they're not answering my emails, not answering my phone calls. He says, well, go to the chief. And she's like, the chief's not answering me. He thinks I'm just like some regular citizen, and he doesn't have to answer to us. It's like, but he worked for us.
Yeah, because I've been seeing, well, I've known about this. This has been going on since the about the 90s with civil asset forfeiture
Yeah.
and unwarranted searches and seizures. And it's all in the name of safety and bullshit. And what they did to you is they took your property without a trial. And how long did it take you to get some of that back? Because you didn't get it all back, right?
I didn't get anything back.
Oh shit. Okay.
At least from the police department. So after the police raided me, then the DOJ raided me, looking for any more guns and stuff, and they found some cap guns and airsoft guns and dummy guns and flare guns. And they took that stuff. And then the harder I push this and the more I go after the police misconduct, the more visible it's getting. So then I got the sheriff's department calling me, and then I got the FBI that ended up raiding me.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around them seizing airsoft guns. Were you able to make those plastic pellets lethal?
No.
Is that why they seized them? Or, because in California, a lot of our gun laws are based solely on aesthetics, the way a firearm looks.
Yeah.
And I know airsoft guns have the look of weapons that aren't necessarily legal, I guess you could say, in California. Was that their premise behind taking that stuff from you? Or
they didn't have any reason, but because I'm into making movies and doing photo shoots and reenactments and public events and stuff, the stuff I'm buying is like the highest quality stuff.
Right.
So we're talking like an Inakatsu M60, which costs like $2,000, or a Marushan M1 Garand 8mm gas blowback, which looks really nice, and I think that was like $800 when I bought it. So these are like really high-end airsoft guns that look the part. And not only did they confiscate them, they actually entered them into AFS, and I've got a printout where they've entered airsoft guns into their automated firearm system or whatever it's called, and it's on paperwork. So now to get my airsoft guns back, I'm supposed to register these with the DOJ and pay a fee.
Wait, hold on.
Yes, that's what the police said. Because they entered them into AFS, I have to register my airsoft guns with the state of California. Even my M60 machine gun, which is airsoft, it's on the AFS, so I need to register it and clear it with the DOJ.
Okay, so I hope everybody out there listening really understood how ridiculous that is. That my local mall, there's 2 airsoft stores, and you could actually shoot them in the mall. And the California government wants this man to register, and I'm not belittling it, but these are not necessarily toys, but they're a form of recreation and activity that are completely non-lethal, yet they're treating this man as if he was that Russian dude that was arming everybody in the Middle East. I don't know if you heard it. I forgot the guy's name, but he was getting all the Soviet surplus stuff and sending it everywhere in the world to terrorists and whatnot. That's the type of level that these people are treating somebody with airsoft guns that's a veteran and is doing nothing more than living his life, doing what he enjoys. Because I used to love making, building model airplanes. And effectively, what they're doing to you, I would have to register my model airplanes with the government if they came and raided my house and seized those. I know it's far-fetched and I'm throwing it way out there, but there's no box to put any of this in because it makes zero sense to me is what I'm trying to get across. And how did you sleep that night after they came and took those items from you?
Oh, I didn't sleep for a few days.
Shit, yeah. And then you said that
was a mess.
The FBI came too?
Yeah, so that was August 5th, 2020. So apparently I've been making lots of anti-police statements on Facebook, So they served Facebook with a subpoena, got all my information, said I was planning an imminent terrorist attack on law enforcement or government, and then used that to no-knock raid me, break into my truck, rummage through everything, break into my storage unit, take a whole bunch of my stuff, took my computer and my phone, a whole bunch of documents.
I mean, if we don't have the First Amendment, what do we truly have, especially in the digital age where you should be? Because I comment on police forces all the time. I also read every day about police officers betraying the Constitution. And for me, they should be held to a higher account than any civilian that is expressing his frustrations with the process. Because if you can't talk about the government in a capacity as a citizen of this republic, you don't have any rights whatsoever to me. And I saw
you have a right to redress grievances. It's literally written.
It is. And I watched a video of the FBI that you have on YouTube returning your stuff, and that short where they're yelling, "Thank you for being a good informant." And I've seen that play before. That play, they use that against a lot of people, especially in the hood, where, on their way out, "Thank you for being a good snitch," and stuff like that. And I admire you stood up to those guys. Your backbone was stiff, and you had a clear focus about you in those videos. And I admired that, because the FBI guys looked like you couldn't get a greased toothpick up their ass. They were stiff, and they knew they were wrong. And, when somebody is wrong, you either contrite and admit it, which our government should be doing, or you're an asshole and belligerent. And they were clearly being assholes and belligerent to you when they were giving you back your stuff.
Every time they show up, I tell them I want them to press charges on the police that raided me. And they always have excuses.
Well,
they're like, go hire a lawyer, go to call internal affairs. It's not our job, yada, yada, yada.
That's that's one interesting fact to me. They said, go get a lawyer and fight for your rights. Well,
that'd be civilly.
Yeah. Well, the simple fact is, lawyers nowadays $300-400 an hour versus the government that has unlimited resources, because they'll just keep printing money and they'll just utilize all the resources they have against you. This country has fundamentally moved against itself to where it's our government agents are cannibals. They're willing to eat us and sacrifice us in order to sustain themselves. And that's yet another reason I wanted to have you on here, because you're a classic example of an American that, like I said earlier, did things the right way. And I want to emphasize that, because a lot of people out there say, if you don't do this, if you just cooperate, if you just blah, 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 everything will be fine. I've always said that's bullshit, because even if you do things the right way, if the government's wrong, they're going to fight you to the very end, even though they're wrong. And wouldn't you say that's pretty much what you've gone through?
Everything from a traffic ticket all the way up to massive misconduct. That's pretty much true.
Yeah.
You can get a traffic ticket and say, no, that's not what happened. You're mistaken. Here's what the rules are. And then you have to go to court, and the officer can lie, or the officer can tell the truth. He can be wrong. He can be right. But you're taking your time off of work. You're losing pay, or you're hiring a lawyer and you're paying out for that. And the police officer, they're getting paid while they go to court. It doesn't matter to him if he goes to court or not. It doesn't matter to him if he loses or not.
No, they have no concern whatsoever, because at the end of the day, the prosecutor, the judge, all the officers in the court, and even city typically have the same people signing their paycheck. And if you look at every aspect of how they deal with the criminal justice system, it's always rigged completely against you. That, you know, we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but in fact, it's the exact opposite, because they could take all your shit and then make you fight to get it back. You know, this, I don't think this was your particular incident is a case of what do you call it? The excuse me. I enjoyed the 90s. I have these brain farts everywhere, but civil asset forfeiture is what I was looking for. I don't think yours is a clear case of that, because they didn't pull you over and search you per se, and you're coming, like there was this guy coming back from Reno, and they knew he had won about $15,000, and the CHP pulled him over as soon as he crossed over into California and seized it. They knew he had won that money at the casino. He had proved it right there on the side of the road, but they seized it nevertheless. You know, this was for you. This was so aggressive and egregious that I don't want Americans to not take away that this can happen to you just based on you expressing yourself about your disappointment in the government on social media.
Over a warrantless firearm confiscation.
Yeah, and
it's a clear constitutional rights violation.
I'm
within my right to call everybody, tell everybody to be very vocal, because you should be returning my property, paying for damages, pressing charges on the officers, and getting this all squared away. And then I will take my property and I'll gladly disappear, and I'll go back to my life being nice and quiet and reserved.
Yeah, because what you do, and I remember you, we're both Facebook banned permanently, but I remember you from several years back, and you would do reenactments and things along those lines. And I was like, this is interesting, because you actually had a gear set of one of my favorite G.I. Joe characters, the guy with the he had the, yes,
Recondo,
yes,
also known as Jungle Recon from Action Figure Therapy.
Yeah, and I had that G.I. Joe character, and I was always, was that a semi-automatic shotgun he came with as a G.I. Joe character? You remember that?
So it looked like a modified M14, like an A1 or an E2 or something like that. But I think it was actually a Beretta BM59 paratrooper model.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So when I bought an airsoft M14, and I bought the actual like $2,000-$3,000 M14 stock to go with it that had the pistol grip on it. And I tried to modify that, put that together. It still didn't quite look right. So then I bought a BM62 semi-automatic, and I bought the BM69 Parastock, and I put those together. So I actually had the correct rifle shooting live rounds, and I built a dummy one too. So there's video out there as me as a Recondo shooting the right rifle.
Oh yeah. So when you're shooting the Mod Deuce and I think the 1990, those were live too, right, on YouTube?
Yeah, semi-auto. So I built the M2 right before the 50 caliber ban, and I had that registered. And then the 1919 was made by Allied Armament, who went out of business shortly after.
Yeah. Well, personally, my favorite military weapon is the M60. That's my dream gun. Chances of me getting it next to zero. So DOJ, if you're listening, I can't get a fucking M60. So calm your nuts.
There's several semis out there.
Oh, let's not put that out there, so anybody who's concerned about my finances can hear that. But anyway, when you were all into this, the shooting and the reenactments and all that stuff, was your wife at the time into it too, or was it?
I got her a nurse uniform,
Uh-huh.
and everything seemed kind of fine. But then when things were going sour and she left, she was upset with me. saying like, I dragged her to this stuff and she didn't want to be a nurse and yada, yada, yada. But it's interesting because when she left me, she took the nurse uniform.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to get too personal, but the only reason I asked that is she seemed hurt by what she did, and that doesn't make sense to bring government into, because I tell people all the time, if you have a mentally ill person in your family, and I'm not saying you're mentally ill, but my example is, do not call the police on your family, because they don't always, especially in domestic violence, they don't come there with good intentions. They're not. They're amped up because they know there's a lot of DV cases that can get violent. So when you bullshit your way into calling somebody over domestic violence, people can get killed, and they might not always be the person that person may want to see harmed. Those are just dangerous cases that we can't take lightly.
Even if you're telling the truth or if you're lying, there's been many cases where a mother is calling the police on a son who has a mental illness, whether he has a disability or he's autism or something, and the police end up killing him because they think he's flipping out. Or there's a case where a father had an argument with the son, and the son grabbed his truck and took off, upset after the argument. Well, the truck is registered under the dad's name. So the dad calls the police and says, hey, my truck just got stolen. So then the police are going after what they think's grand theft auto, and they find the son and they start chasing him. The son gets scared, goes faster. They end up in a chase and a crash, and the police officer ends up shooting him and killing him. So here's the dad just wants to teach his son a lesson, like, Boomer, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I'm going to call the police on you. And he gets his own son killed.
And that leads me into asking you this. Do you think, me personally, I think, and I come from a law enforcement family, and my best friend's a cop up in the Bay Area. I think police have lost their way in this country. And I don't think they truly understand what their mission is, because they've been bred to have a warrior mentality. And like here in California, our governor, who sits down to pee, Gavin Newsom, calls AR-15s and stuff like that weapons of war. But if you've ever looked in any police vehicle, there's an AR-15 in there.
Yeah.
And I always ask, who are they at war with if they carry AR-15s just to do their job every single day? And if they're at war with criminals, who do criminals attack? Criminals attack people like you and me. They don't attack the police on a regular basis. There's incidents where it happens, but they don't. So if the police have weapons of war to wage war against criminals, why can't we have weapons in that same set of references to defend ourselves from criminals, so to speak? So my question to you is, why do you think police have drifted to the extreme as far as over policing people and being so willing to commit violence against citizens of this great country of ours?
Well, when I was a kid in the 80s, like, we'd have cap guns and laser tag. And I remember we're in the front yard, we're shooting cap guns at each other. And these cap guns look like real cowboy revolvers.
Yeah.
And a cop drives by and looks at us, and we look at him, and we keep playing, and he drives on. And if that happened today, those kids would get shot.
Yes, they would.
Or they'd have to drop the gun, and they'd get the police screaming at them, having backup rolling in. But in the 80s, that's just how everyone rolled, and like no one seemed to care. And that's how, you see photos in the 60s, 50s, way before, kids playing with cowboy guns outside. I think everything took a turn for the worse really bad under when we had Clinton and Janet Reno, and they started to weaponize all the agencies.
Yeah.
So like the ATF was collecting taxes on guns, but like, when did the ATF turn really nasty?
Well, after Reagan got shot, they pretty much I completely agree because Clinton was absolutely horrible for this country. But I think a lot of the mindset with our police when they started becoming more aggressive started with the war on drugs because it became this grand boogeyman, uh, going back to Nixon through Reagan and all that. And then Clinton knocked down the wall to me because him and Joe Biden did that crime bill that pretty much weaponized our police with military surplus. And if you've ever played a sport or if you've ever been a Marine, there's a lot of work that goes into that process. There's a lot of time you spend practicing and going over this and that and other thing. And at the end of the day, after you've expended all that blood, sweat, and tears, the thing you want to do is get in the game. And so you get all this training and whatnot these police get nowadays, and they want to use those tools that they've been given. Like when they're given MRAPs, they're going to so-called drug houses, knocking down the door in MRAPs, and they're coming out there with 5 crack rocks and a pistol that hasn't been cleaned in 25 years that's rusty. And for our society, especially after 9/11, it seemed like we elevated our government above ourselves. And so with this government and in its current state where they're demanding hero worship, your experience is one of those examples that I want to put out there to all the people. Like, your experience could be anybody's experience in America. And it only takes one phone call and a few acts of nefarious people who, for whatever reason, whatever they had in their heart and soul, what they did, it could have cost you your life or your mother's life. Would you say?
Yeah.
And with that being said, this is what Americans need to understand about their government, that your government is not your friends. When you say you're a patriot, and a lot of us say that we are, but who are we truly trying to impress when we say we're a patriot? What do you think when you say you're a patriot? Who are you saying that to?
The country.
Right.
Like you'd support the Constitution, but you wouldn't support the government because the government may or may not follow the Constitution.
Yeah, I don't think our government follows our Constitution because, the Supreme Court, for the most part, and I'll give credits because honestly, I don't like liberals because I live in California, and I don't like conservatives either. I think they both are flawed philosophies in a sense that at the end of the day, our Democrats and Republicans are seeking a one-party rule, and nowhere in the history of mankind has a one-party rule ever uphold the true principle of liberty, which is do no harm and letting people enjoy their lives as they see fit, as long as they're not doing any harm. And our Supreme Court, God bless them, typically sides with the government in a lot of cases. I think we're going to get expanded gun rights this year, but a lot of times our Supreme Court, in eminent domain and Miranda rights and cases of police misconduct, they typically side with the government. And what's sad about that is that spans conservative justices and liberal justices. They will always seemingly side with the government in police matters. And I think it's sad, truly. And when I hear your story and when you contacted me, I got banned from Facebook. I was like, oh, damn. And then shortly after that, I got banned from Facebook. We have a fight on two fronts, you and I. And that's why I call you a brother, because we got censored on social media via private company. And my experience with the government may not have been as extreme as yours, but I have been mistreated by the government as well. And that's where Americans need to find common ground, because we are not alone. We're all in the same line. We're looking I'm in the same line as you, you're in the same line as me, and we need to understand that at the end of the day. And that's one of the primary reasons I had you on.
So Facebook being a private company, people make the argument that, well, they can ban you, they're a private company.
Right.
I say, okay, well, let's say your bank doesn't like your politics and they're going to cancel your account and you lose your mortgage, you lose your house. Let's say the gas station saw your Twitter posts. They don't want to sell you gas anymore. Now you're not going to be able to drive your car. And the grocery store, they don't like you all of a sudden. Now they're not going to sell you food. If enough people don't like you for your politics, all of a sudden you're homeless and you're starving and you're on the street eating out of dumpsters.
Yeah.
So there has to be a line somewhere where it's like a private company has to provide you with a service because you need that service. You need food, you need gas, you need electricity.
I get you. Where does it end? Because that's what, a lot of my, I had a lot of cop friends that unfriended me recently on social media and whatnot. And they always used to like to say, that doesn't represent all cops. We're not all like that. And I'm like, well, if you're not all like that, why do you all fight to keep the status quo? And, with the social media companies being, it bothered me for a good week, because when I got banned, it was the week before the 2020 elections, and it was the last week of October 2020 when I got banned. So I couldn't give my opinion on the controversial election we had in 2020, and I found it funny that it was controversial, considering some facts that I spoke on another podcast. But I get what you're saying. I am a capitalist pig, and I do believe in the firm, absolute properties of capitalism. But I think the type of capitalism we have is more cronyism.
Yeah.
And it's going to give merit to socialist beliefs, because it's so inherently unfair what a lot of these capitalist corporations do in our society. And that's not even social media. That's all across the board, because, we're hearing all about inflation right now, but the stock market is going wild. The economic output is going wild. We've had some of the greatest GDP growth in 40 years that it was just recently revealed. But we're getting fed this narrative that, everything is bad. Everything is bad. But these corporations are currently making money hand over fist. And Facebook is one of those corporations. They have not been affected by this pandemic whatsoever. Mark Zuckerberg, he's eating well with his alien-looking ass.
Yeah, they're insulated very well.
Yeah, because
it's like certain government jobs are insulated very well because they can just keep printing money. And they can keep living lavishly while everyone else is suffering.
Yeah, the thing about in California in particular, we had a quote unquote $31+ billion surplus, because the revenue from the billionaires that live here in this state, which there's quite a few, was so high, and the money, the theft money, some people call it taxes, the theft money that came in was so ridiculously high, it was beyond expectations. Meanwhile, Gavin Newsom, who sits down to pee, and these Eskimo brothers with Donald Trump Jr., I just want to always put those little nuggets out there that Kimberly Guilfoyle left Gavin Newsom and she ended up with Donald Trump. So that just shows you how much of an asshole Gavin Newsom is, in my mind. But, all of these California's billionaires kicked in so much money that Gavin Newsom had to make a choice on whether to give us rebates. And then he gave the Golden State, what do you call that, COVID funds or whatever. And the threshold was $75,000. And that's for a couple in California. And I don't know if they chose 75 for a particular reason, but they noted that 75% of Californians make under $75,000 a year. Now, I live down here in Southern California and not too far from Orange County. And not long ago, I don't know the number in my county, but in Orange County, the poverty level was at $89,000 a year a few years back.
Yeah.
And the government, we keep re-electing these people and thinking the government is here for us and all of that. But if 3/4 of your state makes below the poverty level, you're not doing a good job of governing. You're not letting companies do what they need to do in order to make the maximum amount of money that they can pay good wages to people, like back in the day when you could have a one income house. The government is the one that's getting in the way, and the government is the one that stepped on your neck. So I just wanted to ask you, as far as California goes, where do you feel this state is going?
Unfortunately, I only think it's going to be getting worse. I really wish I moved out of state when I had the chance.
Yeah.
I got so many assets tied up here now. I'm trying to get my property back, and I got a kid, so leaving here is going to be really hard. But if I can get everything cleaned up, I might go to like Arizona or Texas. But those are kind of like temporary. Like they're so far behind California.
Yeah.
Right? How much? It's only buying you time when you move, because there's a lot of police misconduct coming out of Arizona. Like even going to look back to like Daniel Shaver a few years ago. So it's like, well, if I move to Arizona, am I going to get targeted down there too?
That's what's scary about Arizona, because, I want to leave the state of California. My areas are northern Arizona, northern New Mexico, and northern Nevada. I've said no to Texas only because Texas will let a cop kill you, beat the shit out of you. There was a guy in El Paso who was handcuffed at the jail, and he did start getting a little bit wild, but he was there for mental issues. And the police shot and killed him at the jail while he was handcuffed behind his back.
Yeah.
And they deemed that justified. And then with Daniel Shaver, which is somebody I so often mention in my conversations, because his murder was so egregious. It was so despicable to watch. This man had on basketball shorts. And I tell people, those are typically with a drawstring waist. The average pistol weighs 4.5 to 5 pounds. A drawstring on some basketball shorts is not going to support a pistol. They got called there because they said there was a man with a rifle. He obviously did not have a rifle. This man did not have any weapons, or could not have been carrying any weapons of consequence to threaten those. I think it was 3 police officers, but only one fired. And the people of Maricopa County found that asshole not guilty. And I'm 100% with you right there when you say you can't, you don't necessarily think you can go to Arizona, because anybody who would not find that man guilty of murder when he shot an innocent man that was basically on all fours and reached to pull up his obviously falling off shorts is beyond disgusting to me. And like I mentioned earlier, the prosecutors in that case were being paid by the same people who were paying the Mesa police in my book. I
like to
yeah.
I like to compare Marines and police a lot to make a point. Just like talking about giving the police equipment. Well, when it comes to the military, you're trained a lot on every weapon and all your gear and all the vehicles and everything. You know everything inside and out, and there's a huge amount of responsibility that comes with that. So, like when the police, they're given like an armored vehicle, it's a brand new toy to them, and they just hop in it and drive.
Yeah.
Maybe they get a crash course. But if you're driving armor in the military, you've been training that for years. You know everything about it. You're really comfortable with it. It's day in and day out. And if you hurt somebody, you're liable entirely. Careers get ended. There's charges. People go to military prison. Dishonorable discharge. You're basically a convicted felon for the rest of your life. So seeing police kill somebody that's unarmed in a situation like that, like let's take that to warfare. A Marine in combat that killed somebody inside of a building like that is clearly unarmed. It's unarmed civilian. That's a war crime. You're doing 20 to 30 years if you did that in a war, in combat. But somehow police stateside during peacetime can shoot somebody in a hallway that clearly didn't have a weapon on them and get away with it.
All right. So as we wrap this up, what kind of message would you give your fellow Americans, your fellow patriots about our legal system, our law enforcement, and your basic constitutional rights? What message would you have them if you were to put something on your tombstone, or tell somebody in the course of a conversation at a bar or whatever? What would you tell them about that?
The Constitution's a piece of paper. Nobody's enforcing it. The government doesn't care about your rights, and they can and will come after you.
I think you cut right to the point and to the chase on all of those points. What I would like to say in closing to all those who are finishing watching this with us is, first of all, thank you. Thank you to Aaron for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. And in closing, I want you guys to know that we are all in the same line. If you choose to ignore what this government is doing to certain people because of their politics or whatever else you may think about other people, look at us. Look at Aaron and I. We're telling you that this is not what you think it is. This government does not care about you. Only people that take care of us, our fellow Americans. And we need to start looking at each other in that type of light, and not in the light of Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative. We need to start looking at Americans as Americans and restoring our constitutional republic. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
For coming on. I hope we can do this again. And as always, live free or die.
Right.
Money talk, bullshit walk. Keep on moving up. Ain't no looking back, ain't no high roller. Pockets.